Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Summer is upon us, and many people decide to get that wanderlust satisfied by stepping out and going to places unknown, or perhaps even places they've been to before. I'm reminded of a story of a group of friends who decided to take a trip together down to Mexico, and as they came back after their one-week excursion, most of their stories surrounded mainly sitting by the pool and sipping drinks with umbrellas in them. And I thought to myself, well, geez, you could have done that here. Is that about the best you could do? And anyway, joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is a wonderful mother and daughter team, and their business is Travel That Matters. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guests, Ann and Angela, as we talk about planning for the next vacation and doing things that seem a little more responsible. Angela, Ann, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you for having us. We're glad to be here.
That's pretty exciting. Mother and daughter teaming up together in a business that involves travel. How did all that start for you?
Well, we were both avid travelers, and my mom, this is Angela, my mom was retired, and I had been living abroad, and I came home, and I knew that I needed to have travel in my life, and she was getting bored in retirement, so we just sort of compared notes on what our next 10 years looked like, and we knew we had to do something where we helped people get out in the world.
Angela, or Ann, I'm sorry, any thoughts on that?
Well, it's one of those things where you think that you're ready to just settle back and, take it easy, and yet I knew that I still wanted to be active and help people do things that I've enjoyed over the years. And then the whole thing about, it's funny you said the story about the umbrella drinks, because that used to be my favorite kind of travel, and now that is just not something that's appealing to me at all. It's so much more interesting to get involved in the culture where you're visiting and actually get to know the people.
Well, I certainly couldn't agree with you more. I spent time traveling, especially around Europe, and I remembered, and I was in the United States Navy, and most people would wander the bars, things like that. And I'm like, but you can do that in the United States.
Right.
Really, I mean, get out there and really, as I like to, as you were saying, I like to kind of blend into the culture and get a feel with what does an average day seem like in a place like this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I want to know where I am rather than, could this be Southern California or is this Miami?
Right. Now, how did you come up with the idea for your business on Travel That Matters, with the theme, the direction, I guess the philosophy that you guys have?
Well, a lot of that came from when I was living abroad and traveling around through Southeast Asia and seeing how tourism can really have a really great impact, and, a lot of places rely on it, but then it also can be pretty negative, and when you notice that it's the visitors coming in and changing it to how, so it's the local culture sort of seems to disappear, and just wanting to do what we can to help keep the places we visit alive the way they originally are, even with tourism.
And now, what kinds of things should you or do you have people consider doing to being a responsible traveler?
Well, the biggest thing, just as Angela alluded to, is to be aware of how tourism is affecting where you're visiting. And we have a tremendous influence as travelers to be either the positive or the negative side of that coin. And because so many economies around the world do rely on tourism, we really want to be part of a movement that is making people aware of how to be conscious and aware of what they're doing when they're in another country, like being good citizens and understanding the culture. And it's a way that when you are in the country to find out, kind of like going back to being a child, just be really curious about what's happening and don't expect it to be like it is at home. It's a chance for you to go and shop where the locals shop and eat where they eat. And like you said, just be immersed in the culture so that you're really experiencing it. And that's going to give them a chance to know you as a foreigner, and you're going to hopefully give them a different idea perhaps of someone from the United States, and it's a win-win for me anyway.
Mm-hmm. It certainly sounds that way, and plus you get different kinds of experiences. What are some of the things that I guess people do as they kind of go in this direction of being a responsible traveler? Could it be, maybe helping to repair a home? Well, what kinds of things are we talking about here?
Well, that could fall more into the voluntourism aspect, and that one is actually kind of a tricky one because voluntourism has come under some scrutiny lately because unfortunately there have been quite a few unethical practices going on where people, the concern is that, volunteers come in and maybe take away jobs from local people, or in the case of with volunteering with orphanages and things, there have actually been industries created around taking children away from one or more parent because they know they'll get money from tourists. So when it comes to that kind of thing, actually it's not so much about going in and doing a project when you're traveling, although it is possible to find really great ones if you do your legwork. But it's more about more of the daily activities and the choices you make and the way you spend your money when you're traveling. It's probably the most powerful way to be a responsible traveler.
Now, how do you interact with the local communities in a way that they can benefit from your visit?
Well, the one thing that we found to be the easiest way is if you do a little research ahead of time, sometimes you can find out about festivals that are happening in the place you're going, and that's a great way to find out how the locals love to spend time. And it's another way that you're giving your money responsibly to hopefully benefit something that's going back to the community. And there's one example that we had a really great time. We were in Zanzibar, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to go on a tour of a spice farm. So we did a little checking and found one that was more of a neighborhood cooperative. And so the tour cost, in other words, you had a tour guide, and that had a fee, and then they had obviously the spices for sale and other cosmetic products that had been made from the spices. And all of those proceeds were going back to the local community. So we knew that our travel dollars were being directed to that neighborhood and knew that we were making really good choices about how we were spending our money. And it was so much fun because they took us around and we were getting to rub or smell the various plants, and they asked us to guess which spice it was going to become. And I didn't do very well. Angela did much better than me.
I did a better job of guessing. And it was actually kind of a touristy thing that, some people might want to avoid touristy things, but it was a really great, one of our favorite things we did that would be, typically touristy, but it was actually one of the best ways that tourism was contributing to that economy.
Speaking of economy, I know one of the big things people like to do, especially when they're abroad, is finding ways to, I guess, bargain with vendors, places that they're actually going to spend their money. Tell us about how people should go. What's the proper etiquette for doing something like that?
Well, that really depends on where you're traveling. Like if you're someplace in like Marrakesh, Morocco, those people are fantastic bargainers, and you would have so much fun trying to get a good deal, and they're not going to take, if you go too low, then they're not going to take that price. So it's super fun. But then there might be a place like, for instance, in Guatemala, along Lake Atitlan, there are cooperatives of weaving women. And those women are actually getting cotton and weaving it into yarn and dyeing it and then hand-making their bags. And a lot of tourists who don't know will come over and try to bargain, not realizing that they've spent hours and hours and hours making this one-of-a-kind piece. So it's more about kind of looking around, and like if you're in a place where there's a ton of stuff and it's all the same at every stall, you're probably going to be able to bargain. And if you're not sure, you can ask. And if you're in a place where there's a lot of artisans and they're clearly doing everything by hand, then I would say maybe don't even try in those places. And the other thing to consider, too, is that, especially in developing countries, that $10 to you, even if you're overpaying, is $10 to you, but it could be worth a lot more to the person that you're buying from.
That certainly makes a lot of sense, that's for sure. You know, one of the things that you start to hear a lot about nowadays is people who like to travel to destinations where the possibility of, let's say, swimming with dolphins or riding elephants seems to be the order of the day. Is this something that fits into being a responsible traveler, do you think?
Well, it depends on, again, how you do it and what information you have. Riding elephants, I would say, please don't do it. I learned recently that actually elephants can only carry about 150 kilograms, which is like 330 pounds. So if you put the carriage thing that they sit on top of the elephant, which is like at least 100 pounds, and then a couple of people, that's too much weight for that poor elephant. So there are wonderful sanctuaries, especially in Thailand, where they've taken elephants that used to be used for logging, and now they're in these sanctuaries where you can go and bathe them and feed them and hang out. You can volunteer for like a week and just like pick up their poop.
Ooh, that sounds exciting. Nothing like cleaning up the environment, right?
And it was fun because you're there and you're just next to an elephant, you know, and these elephants, unfortunately, have already been broken, you know, so that they're not really dangerous. They're still, I mean, you still have to be careful, and they're often injured, so you can be around them, and it's just really amazing. And then with dolphins, you can do wild dolphin swims. You can go, like in Hawaii, even, you can go on a snorkel cruise, and then a pod of dolphins will come swim by, and the boat will stop, and you get to jump in and swim around with them in their natural environment, which is amazing.
I know there's one particular person, I've seen this, I guess it was on a Shark Week, who actually takes you out where you can pet great white sharks.
Oh, my.
That's a pretty exciting trip, I'd think. You know, seeing one of these roll over on their tummy so you can scratch their belly, I don't know.
That doesn't seem natural to me. When it seems like it shouldn't be happening, I tend to avoid those ones.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about this one. I know this is really big, especially for heavily touristed areas, is people who tend to come at you looking for money, begging, things like that. And I know in India it's highly prevalent. Tell us about what that experience is and how you can deal with people who are in that situation.
Yeah, I actually lived for almost a year in Bangladesh, which is one of the poorest countries in the world, and so there's a lot of begging there, and a lot of times it's children and disabled people too, which is super heart-wrenching. And so really the way that you don't know what's happening with that money, you know, especially with kids, like they might not ever see that money. They're getting it for someone else. So the way that you can help your temptation, because you just don't know, is to go and donate money to an organization in that local community that is helping children or is helping, you know, the vulnerable people of that population. And that way you know that you have done your part and you know that you're contributing to something that definitely is a positive thing. And then you know. But one story that I have is I was in Thailand and there were these little boys and they were selling flowers. And I just, you know, it was like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and so I was like, I'm just going to buy all the flowers from this one little boy so he can go home, which is super naive. What really happened was that then all of his friends came over and wanted me to buy all of their flowers too, and he wasn't going home. You know, his mom was there hanging out, and that was just kind of an industry there. So if we stop doing that, if we stop contributing to that, then maybe they won't do it anymore.
Now, you know, as people come to, you know, they discover your website or they hear this interview, which they will, and they think, okay, well, I want to go about planning a vacation. Or what are some of the things that you kind of, you know, ask them where this becomes a very unique experience rather than, you know, let's go to Paris, there's the Eiffel Tower, and they point, yeah, there it is, now what's next to, okay, you know, some coffee somewhere? I mean, what happens? How do you uncover, you know, that out of people and to really get a really good adventure for them?
Well, it's all about listening and just giving the client options. And it's sort of interesting that you mentioned Paris, because there's ways to actually travel responsibly wherever they want to go. So it's more leading them in the direction of something that they can do. Like I was talking about the spice farm in Zanzibar. That would be something that, if it was in Paris, there would be an activity that they could do that might fall into that category of a tourist attraction that everybody does, but we have the resources to find kind of maybe that more behind the scenes that will be more of a chance to see the real deal instead of just the surface stuff that the big bus tours kind of thing does. And we're able to help find those destinations that actually have been found out that they have been certified. It's not necessarily an official thing, but they have organizations that have come in and they are seeing that they are making sure that employees are treated properly in the hospitality industry and that things that are happening are kind of like what we would call the green practices. And so you can find those destinations initially, and then there are lots of ways to find out about hotels that are also looking at being environmentally and eco-friendly. And there's a website called bookdifferent.com where you can see hotels. They give them a little carbon footprint rating, and they have these cute little feet that tell you, are they making sure that they recycle? Are they using water properly? And we can help them find the accommodations that are actually helping the green side of things. And it doesn't have to be just the small locally owned place. Even a lot of the big chain hotels that we kind of think are big corporations, they sometimes are the leaders in that area of making sure that the tourism is going to be sustainable and ethical and is still there for next generations.
You know, that's interesting, Ann, that you bring that up. I remember I was talking with a friend of mine, and he's an avid climber, and he was saying that it was really astounding to discover that on Mount Everest there's thousands of pounds of garbage left behind by climbers.
Oh my.
And you think, are you kidding me? You guys can't show enough respect in that area to pick up your stuff and take it back down the mountain, you know, and so that actually spawned a whole new industry where they have Sherpas now that actually go along, and that's what their job is to make sure that that doesn't happen. But, you know, it's really interesting sometimes that, and you know, certainly correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've seen it, especially from American tourists, is that there seems to be a particular arrogance about how they are in a particular area when they're vacationing, as though they can kind of come and go and leave it just as it is. And you know, what do you say to people like that?
Well, it's a matter of being a good citizen. I mean, it's being aware of what you're doing. We would guide a client to say, you know, if you're going to be visiting someplace new, look at what's happening around you. It's sort of funny that when people go on vacation, it's like their brains turn off. They come in and they're like zombies almost. So part of our education when we work with a client is to just let them know that they're going to have more fun. It's going to be a much more enriching experience if they're paying attention and they're not just, you know, turning into these, you know, non-thinking people. Just being conscious and observant and a good ambassador and a good citizen. And just like you say, if probably, I mean, maybe I don't know this is true, but if they had been hiking in Yosemite, would they have left their trash behind? It's like engage your brain and make conscious decisions.
If you would do it at home, you know, as far as like if there are practices that you, like if you have a reusable water bottle or a reusable shopping bag at home, well, take it with you when you travel and use it there too, you know.
Now, I'm on your Facebook page here, and here's something I didn't know about, but certainly this is something you hear a lot of people doing, especially when it comes to coming to Oregon, of all places, and that is all visiting wine country. That can always be fun, having a vacation like that. But I didn't realize there's a wine theme park in Bordeaux, huh? Tell me about that, because that's a really interesting structure that I see here.
Yeah, I would not have expected the French to go into such a theme park world, but I think it would be pretty amazing to go check out a wine theme park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I had a guest on our program a couple of years back, and he was one of those that decided to bring over an Americanized version of the mini strip mall. And you know those places, what do they call those? You know, like Nike has one, and you know they're the kind of stores where, you know, it's like a specialty store just for that. It eludes me what they call those. But anyway, he brought that over to France, and he was talking about his experience about what it was to be able to try to do what we do here in America and how difficult that really was. It's a really funny story, but, I thought to myself, that could be another way to go, too, when you go on vacation. And I'm wondering, what has been one of the most unique vacations that you've helped someone or a group of people plan?
Well, I'm in the process of working with a couple going to Africa, and granted, everybody thinks about, we just go on safari, but we're also coming up with some more unique ways of seeing the country. Like, we were in Tanzania, and we went off the beaten path, and you can still be safe and not have, maybe all the comforts that you would if you were going to some more European-type country, but these folks they are wanting to do something more off the beaten path, and it's just really fun to be working with suppliers and the people that we know that do the tour operations on the ground to say, okay, these people want to do something a little more unique. So it's just about listening and making sure that you're taking them where they're safe, but they're going to go on a walking safari instead of just being in the truck. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do for people.
Have you ever had anybody plan, for instance, like an African animal tour, things like that?
You mean like a safari?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, we ourselves have done that so that we have a more understanding of what it's like for clients. In general, Africa is doing a really great job of conservation and just being more aware of how to interact with the animals in a way that we're able to be around them but not have a negative impact. But one of the things I found was super interesting when we were there in Tanzania was we were speaking with people who have been going on safari for years, when they used to go out and camp in tents on their own with nothing, just in the middle of the savannah or wherever, where there's wild animals all over the place. And I just can't even imagine what that must have been like.
Wow, it's just also amazing. It's really interesting, too, because a lot of times when people decide to plan their travel, they're always looking for bargains. And I remember talking with a travel agent, and they said, it's better that you turn it over to people like us because, for one, we can save you a lot more money and make that whole experience a lot smoother for you as well. And I can see how that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yes. It's especially with something like as a complicated trip where there's a lot of moving parts, or there are a lot of people with groups or with families, just to know that somebody who has a network of people who will make recommendations, and then also that that someone you can call. It's not like you did it on the internet and then who do you call if something goes wrong. You have somebody there that can work out any issues that might come up when you're traveling.
Any thoughts on that, Ann?
Oh, absolutely. It's like the same Tanzania trip, we were kind of doing it in the bargain way because we were just scouting various resources, and so we were on a little bit of a budget. And we learned the hard way that when you are on your own and you don't have anyone to kind of back you up, we got stranded in the middle of the savannah with a car that got broke down, and we were basically on our own, and our driver didn't speak English, and we learned the hard way that you need to be working with someone on the ground who really knows what's going on and can help you if there's something that goes wrong. So the bargain shopper may save money, but in the long run, it was not.
You're not really saving money.
Especially when you get into one of those showers that don't work the way yours does at home, right? Now, how can people find you? I know I was just mentioning that I'm on your Facebook page. Is there a website, places where people can find out more?
Yes, our website is travelthatmatters.net, N-E-T, not .com. If you go to .com, you won't find us.
Well, very good. Well, do you have any final suggestions on people having a positive impact on the places they visit without giving up any of the fun?
Well, again, it's just that idea of being the good ambassador. It's so much more enriching when you are engaging with the locals and wanting to learn from them. I mean, we have sometimes, as Americans especially, this idea that we have the best way to do things. And if there's just one suggestion that I would give any traveler is to, like I said before, go with a curious mind. Learn from the people that you're meeting when you're in a foreign country. Take the time to know what's going on in their world and not always imposing and expecting it to be just like at home. This is a great opportunity to get an expanded experience, and I highly recommend just kind of going back into that childlike mode and be ready to just go out of your little comfort zone or do whatever it is to just really get immersed and enriched by the new place you're visiting.
Sounds very exciting. I want to thank both of you for taking the time out to join us here on the program today. And again, if you can give out that website where people can discover more.
TravelThatMatters.net.
TravelThatMatters.net, and our guests today, Ann and Angela, the mother and daughter team that founded this wonderful company. I want to thank you both for joining us here on the program today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniel.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. Remember, travel and travel that matters. That's something that you want to consider on your next vacation. You can also discover more by visiting us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is number 50. Sign up for our free weekly e-news updates and stay up to date with what's going on and Beyond 50 and upcoming shows as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.